take a mom and she's got this 8-month-old baby inside her. She knows the baby's there, but the baby has no idea that she's there. We are actually in God's womb. It's like we are the babies. We just can't get to God yet, but some of us can hear and some of us choose not to hear. You know, imagine if you were a child and you lost your parent. What are you going to do after searching for them for about an hour? What, you're going to just let them go? No, you're going to keep searching till you find them. We have to be the ones who say, God, I'm opening the door. I want you to come into my life. You know, everybody tells me, oh, God's done this for me, God's done this for me. And I used to think, how does God actually help anybody? People say, you know, you need to pray and then God's going to help you with your life. But I'm thinking, yeah, but you know, I'm a logical person. Tell me, how exactly is he going to help? You know, is he going to show up in front of me and, you know, do something for me that I can't do? What is it that he's going to do? How's he going to do it? This used to really bug me for years. And it actually kept me away from even going down that spiritual road of trying to connect with God, because I didn't know how exactly he was going to help me until I realized this. There are many different ways that God can actually help a human being, but what I've found and I've discovered for myself, and I believe this totally, is that there are 3 substantial ways that God actually helps a human being. Number 1 is through his presence. Number 2 is through his power. And number 3 is through his love. These are the ways that God actually helps human beings. If I say that to anybody, they'll say, well, what do you mean by that? So let me explain to you how God helps us with his presence. You know, when I was 14 years old, my dad knew. He could just tell that I didn't have a passion for studying, but he knew I had a passion for business. My dad was a businessman, and what he did was he went ahead and purchased this retail store across the street from where we lived. And he came to me and he said, look, I bought that retail store across the street. There's nothing in it, but I want you to figure out what you want to sell in it, and I want you to manage the store. And what we can do is, while you're at school, we'll hire somebody to run it, and then when you come home from school, then you can take over. But you decide what you want to sell in that store. I couldn't believe that my dad did this, but I got so excited because I've always wanted to have my own business. And so when he said this, what do you want to sell? Instantly I said, I want to sell sportswear, because I had this one brand in my head that somehow there was an emotional connection with that brand. My next word was Adidas. I want to sell Adidas stuff because I just love that. Adidas shoes, Adidas t-shirts, everything to do with Adidas. I want to sell all that stuff. And he looked at me and he goes, okay, call Adidas. So back then there was no internet. So I grabbed the phone book and I'm looking for Adidas, and I found the number and I phoned them, and the receptionist picked up the phone. Remember, I'm 14 years old. And the receptionist says, hello, can I help you? I said, yeah, hello. We want to buy Adidas sportswear. And it was almost like this woman's going, who is this? And I said, I had to buck up a little. Yeah, we have a business and we want to sell Adidas sportswear. So how do we buy your shoes? And she got the picture. She said to me, she goes, okay, in order to buy our sportswear, you have to come to an exhibition where you meet the reps and you see all the goods that we have, so you can pick and choose the kind of things that you want to have. I said, okay. So I got the details down and I said to my dad, they want us to go to an exhibition so we can pick out all the stuff we want to sell. And my dad goes, okay, let's go. And then I remember that specific day we walked in, and man, I'm 14 years old. I'm a tiny little guy, but I walked in there as though I was like 6 feet tall, man. I walked in there with so much confidence, and I walked right up to one of the sales reps and I said, we want to buy some Adidas sportswear. But you know what? This confidence wasn't coming from my dream of having my own business or from my ability. It was only coming from one source: the presence of my dad. He was right behind me, so I had absolutely no fear. I knew he was there. There's no way that I had any reason to fear anything. And that's why I had so much confidence to talk to these reps and say, yeah, we want to set up a store and we want to sell Adidas stuff. So what do you got? And at first I could see his smile. He's sort of looking at me and then looking at my dad's face. And, you know, my dad's like, talk to the guy, don't talk to me. So we sat there and he explained all the stuff about the shoes and the t-shirts. And at the end, he says to me, he goes, before we can sell you one shoe, we have to set up an account and your first order has to be £2,000. This was like 45 years ago. This is like £4,000 $2,000. And I looked at my dad. I says, they want 2,000 pounds of orders before they'll sell us one pair of shoes. And my dad said, don't worry about it. Give them the 2,000 pound order. So I'm like, wow. So I said, yeah, we'll take those shoes. We'll take those shoes. We'll take those t-shirts. And we had the order. And we walked out of there and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I'm in business for myself. And in the next few weeks, my dad took me to store after store after store, other wholesalers where we bought other merchandise, started putting all this merchandise together. But I couldn't believe my dad spent close to, I would say, 8,000 pounds of his money over the course of the next month or two to stock up inventory in that store. So eventually we opened up the store, and every day I came from school and I came in, the employee that I had left and I took over and I did everything. You know what the crazy thing is? I can't even believe it that I'm even telling you this now. I'm a 14-year-old kid and my dad never questioned any of my decisions when I was dealing with these sales reps, when I was buying inventory, when I was setting anything up. He didn't ask me no questions. And I'm just wondering, like, why are you not asking any questions? Why are you not criticizing me? Why are you not giving me this advice or that advice? He wasn't. For some reason, he was demonstrating some sort of total belief in that I could do this. And I never realized what my dad's actions, how powerful my dad's actions were until 30 years later. After he died, I watched a movie called Immortals. And in this movie, there was a guy named Theseus, and he was struggling greatly in his life. His mother just died, and he had lost all the confidence that he had in himself. And he didn't believe that he could do anything. And God himself, Zeus, came down and said to Theseus, Theseus, no god will ever come to your aid again. You are on your own, mortal, but I believe in you. Prove me right. Lead your people. When I saw that scene in the movie, right away I thought to myself, I can't believe it. That's what my dad was doing. All those years when he bought the store, put the merchandise in there, risked all his money on a 14-year-old kid. Through his actions, he was actually saying to me, you don't need my help. I believe in you. Look, I'm risking all this money on you. Prove me right. Taking that scenario in my life, I realized the reason why I had so much confidence and so much inner strength. It was strictly because of the presence of my dad in my life. I could feel that he was right there beside me. So I believe that God actually helps us in the exact same way as a loving parent helps their child. When we pray to God and we ask God to come into our life, all of a sudden you start building a relationship of prayer with God, to the point where you can actually feel his presence inside of you. Hey, maybe you have to cry a bit. Maybe you have to let those tears just flow. And maybe you have to just tell God how angry you are about life because things are not going the way they're going. And it's almost like as you keep praying and you keep telling God what's going on in your life, that all of a sudden it's almost like a switch that is turned on and something's different about yourself. You feel that when you walk around, you know what? I don't know what it is, but I just feel that I'm not alone anymore. I feel that God may actually be with me. As I'm walking around, I can hear a voice in my head saying, you're gonna be all right. I'm right here. I've heard all your prayers for the last 6 months. You're gonna be okay. And what happens is when you get to that point of feeling his presence in yourself, inside of you, it's amazing what it does to your confidence. It gives you this strength that you never had before. It's like you have no reason to fear anything because you're no longer alone. This is how God helps us through his presence. And the only way that we can feel his presence is through deep dialogue and deep personal prayer. And that's what's going to connect you to the presence of God. That's when you're going to feel the confidence and strength because you figured out how to connect with God through your vulnerability, through you talking and sharing and letting everything out of your heart to this invisible creator. The second one, how does God help us through his power? And you know, through my spiritual mentor, I actually learned this, that God doesn't do our work for us, but God's responsibility is to create the environment around us. So through his power, what God does is he sends the right people into our life. But then we have what we call the human portion of responsibility. Is we have to now, through our respect and kindness to people, we have to pull those people into our life. It's like, you know, when you discover a mentor, like David Goggins all of a sudden, you know, you listen to a David Goggins video and you think, Where's this guy been all my life? This is what I needed to get to the next level in my health. Or you discover another mentor in a different area of your life, maybe to be a parent, and all of a sudden you get an epiphany and it changes your life totally. Those people that entered into my life, I totally believe that God sent them in our way. And that's how he helps us, is through sending people in our direction. But we have to take responsibility to pull them in. You know, I explained this to this one person and he was saying, oh, this is like the secret. This is like the manifestation. You know, whatever you manifest out, the universe will return it back to you. And you know, I'll be honest with you, I don't really relate to that myself personally. The reason why is I can't really have a personal relationship with the universe. You know, so it's like, I don't want to change God's name to the universe. And then everything is just so vague. If I got some troubles, if I've got something going on in my life, what am I going to say? Dear universe, please. I mean, I'm not going to say that. I feel that there's something missing there. I want to be able to say, God, can you help me with this? And if it works the same way as the universe sends it back to me, then great. But to me, I want to have a personal relationship with my creator, with my heavenly parent. I don't want to just think that I just ask the universe and the universe just sends it to me. Where's the inner power in that? If you think about it, if you take a mom, a woman who's about to give birth, and she's got this 8-month-old baby inside her, right? She knows the baby's there, but the baby has no idea that she's there. So who's right and who's wrong? You know? So she knows my baby is in here. So what's she doing for the baby? She can't talk to the baby in a way that the baby understands her. But what is she doing? First of all, she is protecting her baby. She's giving love to that child, and that child has no idea that she even exists. And she may even sing to the child, but this child doesn't have any ears. But what the child has is it can feel things, right? It can feel whether or not the environment that it's in feels good. When his mother sings and he feels the vibrations, the child knows, oh, I like this. Where do these vibrations come from? So the thing is, if we look at from the perspective of the child now, imagine if there were two twins. There were twins inside the mother's womb and they're having a conversation. So do you think there's a mother? Do you think mothers even exist? And one kid says to the other, oh, I know she exists. And the other one says, what do you mean you know? Yeah, I even hear her singing. And the other one's going, how can you say that? Because I do. And if you went further out, you'd actually see it. The mother singing and the kid on this side is listening to her, but the other kid can't hear the vibrations of her voice because he's in the other side. Yet one is definitely thinking, I know she's there. And the other one's, no, she's not there. And they're having an argument. Well, the thing is, we know it's true, but neither one of them can prove to the other that they exist. They just got to have faith that they're okay. And to me, I just look at life as that tree, how'd it get there? Didn't get there by itself. That shopping mall, well, somebody put it there. That Lamborghini, somebody put it there. But us, who put us here? Somebody must have put us here. And I choose to believe that's our personal creator. But I also choose to believe this entire universe, we are actually in God's womb. It's like we are the babies and we just can't get to God yet. But some of us can hear and some of us choose not to hear because we can't hear. You know, so all we got to do is do the things that allow us to feel his presence. You know, imagine if you were a parent and you lost your child, or you're a child and you lost your parent who had Alzheimer's. They walked out the house. What are you going to do after searching for them for about an hour? What, you're going to just let them go? No, you're going to keep searching till you find them. Well, why isn't it the same thing for God? Why don't you keep searching, keep praying until you make that connection? It's all our own personal choice. The third way that I personally believe that God helps us is actually through his love. And you know, I've heard so many people talk about because of God's love, it healed the pain in my heart and has given me this tremendous sense of peace. I always wondered, how does he actually do that? How does God actually remove the pain in our heart with his love? I wanted to understand it logically. How does a person actually receive God's love? Well, here's what I believe. If you ask somebody, you know, where does God live? Like you'll hear some people say, oh, you know, God lives everywhere. Okay, yeah. So you're telling me that God lives in that chair. God lives in that tree. Yeah, okay, fine. God's essence is everywhere. But if you were God, would you really want to live in that tree or in the chair? Of course not. So where does God actually want to live? And I truly believe God wants to live in the hearts and minds of his children. That's where God wants to live. So how does somebody feel God's love? Well, I believe that God is or has a foot in the door of every person in the world's heart. Like his foot is right there. That door is open. But what we have to do, if we want to really feel his presence and his love, is we got to open that door. And we've got to pray and say to God, God, please come into my heart. I want you to come in. He ain't coming in unless you invite him. Even though he has a bit of a presence, he's given us free will to decide how much of his love comes inside, how much of his power, his wisdom, his presence that we as human beings would like to have. So we have to be the ones who say, God, I'm opening the door. I want you to come into my life. And so the first thing is we just got to ask, please come in. When we say that, when we ask, that's when he says, I've been waiting so many years for you to say this. Thank you so much. And then he enters inside of us. So when he comes inside, how does his presence, which is completely love, how does that actually heal us? Now I'm going to give you an example. A few years back, me and my wife, we were sleeping in bed and it was 1 o'clock in the morning and we get a phone call. And all of a sudden I grabbed the phone and I put it to my ear and I heard this girl screaming in the phone, something's happened to my mother, something's happened to my mother. And my wife heard the voice and she says, give me the phone, give me the phone. She grabbed the phone, put it to her ear. She started listening to this girl and what it was actually my niece. And what happened was something did happen to her mom. Now, my brother-in-law and his wife, they had 2 kids. One was 9 years old, one was 11 years old. They were really well off financially. I mean, they were traveling around the world. They had every material thing that you could think of. I mean, their life from the outside looked absolutely magical. And on this one particular day, my brother-in-law went to a business meeting and he came home late. And when he came to the home, all the lights were off. And so he was going upstairs where his kids were obviously sleeping. And then he turned around and he noticed that there was a light that was on in the basement. So he turned around and he went back down into the basement only to see his wife hanging from a rope. And when I heard this, I couldn't even believe this was happening. His wife was suffering from bipolar, severe depression. None of us knew this. And the crazy thing was, her life from the outside looked magical. Upstairs in her bedroom were 2 kids sleeping. At the age of 9 and 11, they were sleeping upstairs when she did this, and her husband came and found her. Now, when this happened, all the family came together trying to comfort my brother-in-law, to comfort her husband because of what happened to his wife. And everybody was saying, you're going to be all right. But you know what the crazy thing is? How can we comfort him? We've never cried the tears he was crying. Nobody else in the family had ever gone through what he was going through. Nobody had cried those tears. And it was almost like we were trying to comfort him, but we could tell it wasn't working. And he went to a counselor, and the counselor said, look, we're going to find you somebody that you can work with that has gone through the exact same thing that you went through. He found a woman whose husband did the exact same thing. And the crazy thing is, she was the only one that was able to comfort him, to get him to understand what he was going through, because she had already cried all the tears that he was now crying. And so he knew, whatever she tells me, I'm going to relate, because she understands exactly how I feel. I heard this phrase from my spiritual mentor, and it says, only the person who has cried more tears than you can comfort you, because they know exactly what you're going through. Now think about this. I just mentioned to you that God wants to live in our hearts. He's got a foot in the heart of every child and adult in the entire world. So if God lives in the hearts and minds of his children all around the entire world, that means God can feel everything that his children are going through. Every time somebody feels any kind of pain, God also feels their pain, but 1,000 times more intensely. He can feel everything that they're going through. If somebody is being abused, if somebody dies, whatever the pain is that they're feeling, whatever the tears that they're crying, God is crying the same tears, so that when we ask God to come into our heart, we know God understands how we feel, because he's already cried the tears that we are crying. So when we say to God, God, please come into our life, his presence comes into our heart and his love comes into our heart and actually pushes out the pain, and his love comforts us because he's already cried all the tears that we are crying. That's how he comforts us. So in summary, the 3 ways that God can actually help us is through his presence, through his power, and through his love. But nothing is going to happen in our lives unless we become a little vulnerable. We just got to open that door and let him in so that he can do the things he wants to do in our life. Just let him in.